Hello, LinkedIn, for another great Q&A session tonight. We are having three great speakers joining us. They gave some insightful presentations during the COVID-19 vaccine summit last week, and they kindly agreed to share with us more in terms of the questions that came up today, as well as all the questions that will, as always, come up during the live from all of you. First and foremost, let me briefly introduce each of them to you. On one side, we have Sophia Lee, who is the CEO and co-founder of S.lab Asia. She has shared a little bit on their packaging solution, Greeny Medibox, that is very useful for the transportation of vaccines and COVID-19 vaccine in particular. They're one of the leading cold box technology companies in South Korea, and now they're rapidly expanding across Asia and Middle East. Sophia, thanks for joining us and looking forward to having you today.
Thank you for all of your time. Very nice to see you all in here.
And also, I must share with everybody that you know, Sophia is literally 1 hour away from the new year in Korea. So you know, big thank you also for the flexibility in joining us. You know, in such a late time for you.
No worries, happy to join.
Then we have Chris Ashbaugh, who is the head of healthcare and cold chain at Emerson. As all of you know, Emerson is a global provider of heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and refrigeration solutions. They also have different cold chain monitoring tools and management software, as well as professional tools. Emerson Commercial and Residential Solution is one of the two core business platforms of Emerson Electric, a Fortune 500 company with sales of 16 billion and more than 83,000 employees worldwide. Chris, thanks for joining us, and quite early for you in the US. Many thanks.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Super. And last but not least, we have Francesco Incalza, who is the president of Thermo King Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Thermo King is the global leader in transport, refrigeration, and heating for trailers, trucks, buses, rail cars, and containers. They pioneered transport refrigeration over 80 years ago, and today they continue innovating sustainable transport temperature control solutions. Francesco, many thanks for joining us from Brussels.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be with all of you.
Super. So maybe let's start with this question that we got kind of across the board, and given the situation where there's this big spike, right, and in demand for cold chain solutions for the different boxes, the different products that you all manufacture. The question that came in was, how are your stock levels? How is your turnaround time for clients that, you know, obviously ask you for these solutions, and are you able to deliver fast enough, right? So maybe I'll start with you, Sophia, because you're telling us that you're actually from a manufacturing site, and then I'll go to Chris and to Francesco.
Yeah, so I'll be very open to this question. So how are your stock level? I would say that every manufacturer in the world are in a shortage, and which means that it will take some time for us to manufacture the new batch of the boxes. Once they place the order, then it will take us at least 1 to 6 weeks, so 4 to 6 weeks to release the stock. But I believe that is one of the fastest in Asia region, considering that, well, first of all, it is a New Year's holiday in Asia, and this is a very big holiday, especially in China. They will take like 2 to 3 weeks off, starting last week already. So all the shipments are fully booked, or they're not shipping anymore. So basically, it's the biggest factory in Asia, and then if they are stopped, then probably the rest of the Asia will have a trouble to gather this so yes, it is there are some quite delays are anticipated until March. Yes.
Thank you. Chris?
Yeah, our components have been impacted a bit. I would say globally, ultimately, we're hitting the same kind of constraints that everyone is. But as we look at the actual vaccines that are hitting the end user market, the supply levels aren't really there to ultimately impact the end users at this point. That throughput to the end user at the inoculation level is happening pretty rapidly right now, and I think as we see supply chain catch up and some of these constraints that Sophia just talked about, I think that we're going to see some other challenges that we're faced with.
Francesco, from your side?
Yeah, we actually don't have capacity issues, so we have the stock immediately available. I have to say that we had seen the needs coming from a distribution storage standpoint for the vaccines back already in July, August timeframe, and at that time we invented this new solution called the super freezers, containerized solution. That's from the ideas generation to the launch, it took 3 months. And we are partnering with Emerson actually for our compressors and controllers. And we immediately started production, and we also have production and stock available in all 3 continents, at least in Asia, in Europe, and North America. And we managed also to avoid the congestion at different ports in the West Coast, on the East Coast of the United States. So we have stock available that we can make available at customer site within 2-3 days from Chicago, Los Angeles, or Florida, Miami in the United States or South America, or in Europe from Antwerp, Rotterdam, or in Asia from Shanghai. So we have stock immediately available for shipments, 2-3 days available at customer site.
I'll stay a little bit with you, and I'm glad that you opened up the topic of collaboration, Francisco. I didn't actually know that. Yeah, so great that actually with Emerson and Chris is here. I'd love to get all your perspective, all 3 of your perspective, and starting with you, Francisco, on this topic, collaboration. I was listening just before we went live on one global expert that was suggesting that why don't we even do a global platform where we share all this data around vaccines from the manufacturing side all the way to inoculation and kind of aggregate, because then it would help the whole world. How do you see things? This is, what you did with Emerson is a good example, but in the overall scheme of things, there's businesses that are competing with each other, right? So obviously there's a level of constraint in this. So maybe share a little bit your views, and has this COVID-19 vaccine sped up that idea of collaboration, or hasn't it?
It does, at least for us, and I believe as well for everybody else. When we came up with and several of the solutions that have been again specifically invented for the crisis, like again the cold storage solutions, the cold cubes, and the different telematics and sensors that we're making available for this type of units, we didn't think only about the business. We thought that we wanted to help the world and all our communities to go through the crisis. So we started partnering with several companies, and Emerson, which is one of our best partners, long partner for Thermo King. We work together to make components available right away, and also compressors that were not in use before, or that needed to be amended in order to support these ultra low temperatures. But in a nutshell, I have to say we didn't think about business much or sales at that time when we invented these new solutions. We thought that we wanted to do something to help. And everybody is experiencing at home, having issues with kids stuck with the hybrid schooling or homeschooling and things like this. At some point, I pushed our teams across the different regions of the world to come together, and using also technologies of partners like Emerson and others to come together and collaborate to bring it to life solutions that were there to help. In particular, when we come to sharing data and things like this, again, all these solutions are what we call intelligent solutions. All of them have integrated the data logger to record the time, temperature, humidity, and are fully connected 24/7. So you can download the data at the container side, at the unit side, but also remotely. And this data can serve different pharma companies, third-party logistic companies, suppliers, hospitals, clinics. Everybody can download if connected data from the units to measure the temperature, to look at the humidity, to test the units, and to also check the feasibility of the units, but also to make sure that the vaccines in this particular case don't get wasted, because as soon you break the cold chain, the vaccine gets old and you waste a very important load. Our units allow this remote monitoring where this kind of breaking or breaks in the cold chain won't happen. But as long as you keep them logged into electricity at all times. But in general, we have seen a lot of collaboration, cooperation from our vendors and from our customers, from our distributors at all levels. So I'm very happy to report that no one looked at the business only side of it, but also looked at how we could help our communities around the world.
Thank you. And I guess a good intro to you, Chris, and there you go, a good testimonial from Francesco. And whilst you think also about the topic of collaboration, how it's working, I'll also pull this question that came from Sabia. Sabia is actually our partner in Costa Rica. So maybe whilst you're answering the collaboration piece, Chris, maybe if you can touch slightly also upon Latin America and how you see the situation there, because you're closest, I guess.
Sure. So first of all, thank you, Francesco, for the mention of the support and the collaboration between our teams. And compressors and controls is one component of that collaboration. And ultimately, what we're starting to see is the need to touch data points and that have never been requested before. And as we see a global supply chain that has been completely turned upside down, and providers in the space that I work in today are really trying to not just look at time, temperature, and location and the efficacy of a vaccine, but they're also looking at how do we respond to this faster? How do we get our workforce trained to these new workflows and new things that we're doing? And that really speaks to not building new things, but connecting to things that are already built. And it's an interesting time for us in that this collaboration has really taken hold, and it's been a catalyst of change. And I think that these pockets of collaboration that we're doing in our core business are leading to new innovations that will forever change this industry and ultimately impact the supply chain. When we speak about Latin America, to that question, that's not an area that I have much expertise in. And my area right now is in the final mile of the delivery at the provider network. So I think I'll hand that one back to you if I could, because I don't want to speak out of turn on that.
No problem. And you're the closest in that, so I thought, okay, let me take the opportunity. No worries, Chris, on that. Sophia, Green EMEA, I mean, you have quite an innovative product. Maybe you can speak from a collaboration, but also how you brought it to market. And I think you moved quite fast, right? So I think there's a story to be told there. So maybe share your perspective as well.
Yeah, so the Green EMEA is the packaging solutions for the vaccines, and we designed the packaging from the beginning according to the size of the vaccines to be distributed, and that request was from the manufacturers. So yes, it has been a very short period of time that we finished the DQ, and we go all the way to the OQ and PQ, and then release the product. It has been almost a month for now. It's a pretty new product in the market. To add up a little bit more about the collaboration in terms of the data, we think we are using the data logos and the IoT devices that is manufactured in the sometimes US or Europe or even in Korea. But I think the most important thing is the accessibility to the data. So every party who's playing the parts in this logistics has their own platforms, and it is not about it is more about how to react on the data and how fast the things can be done and solve the issue, right? So we do think it is critical to connect the data as an open API, and then integrate to their own platforms that each of the players are using so that they can react fast. And that will reduce significant time to individually download the data from the device and then inform each other and then react. But other than instead of that, we can give them the integrity data and then give them the alarm at the same time so that we can all react fast. So yeah.
And Chris, building upon this point, because I think during your presentation you were talking about big data at the summit, and you had some pointers, and I know that there's quite a few solutions that Emerson has on that side. Maybe you can share one on that, but also how do you make sense of all this information that comes in, and yeah, I guess how you look at things from Emerson perspective.
Yeah, this is a great question. I think the ultimate starting point is the patient and the people and the humanity of it. And I think when we work backwards from that, we look at how do we make our loved ones safer? How do we get through this faster? And then you can start to connect the different things that make that happen. And ultimately, the idea of IoT is not just the devices that we make any longer. The idea is let's connect to people faster. Let's solve this problem. And ultimately, that's led us down a path of connecting to proximity and how do we get to the people that are nearest to things to make sure that we protect the integrity of the assets themselves. But the real thing that we work towards is protecting that patient on the other end. And losing a vaccine is a terrible thing, but putting an ineffective vaccine into somebody is even worse. And so this idea of interoperability is infinite. And that's kind of the perspective that we take to it, is let's solve the problem, but with the intent of patient safety in mind first, and using that as a filter.
Thank you, Chris. I'll pull this very good question that came in from Gokhan. I guess kind of going one level deeper into that idea of collaboration, right? Collaborating with rivals as well, benchmarking. How do you manage? Because sometimes it's I think it's called frenemies, right? There's a term, frenemies. Different markets, your competitors, other markets, you're working together. How to do this in this fast-changing environment, and also given the situation that we have at hand, which is unprecedented. I hate that term, but it is what it is. So, Francesco, maybe I'll love to get your thoughts on this.
Yeah, these are not normal times, right? So there is not such a thing like competing with one of our competitors on something that is urgent to help. As Chris said, the humanity. So we put ourselves in the shoes of like governments, countries that have to fight this pandemic and help all their populations, and we try to help, as I said earlier. I don't mind to learn from others if something needs to be done. I don't mind to learn from other innovations from even the competitors in order to speed up processes for our products and make those available in the marketplace, and again support the distribution and inoculations of these vaccines. What we're doing today, for instance, there are several parts of the world, both in the United States, in Europe, Central Europe, and Northern Europe, in Asia, in South Korea, in Malaysia, and Indonesia, where we're partnering with several third-party logistics companies of the top 5 in the world. And we are coming together. Normally, we would also compete on certain solutions like cold storage. In these cases, we are providing units and equipment to them, and they're distributing vaccine or doing storage of vaccines in different parts of the world. There is space at this point during crisis for everybody, but the goal is not to think about too much about the business when there is at stake the humanity, right? So we want to all get out of this before this becomes a more serious problem than it is already, because at this point everybody's talking about 70% of herd immunity by 2021. If we don't hurry up with logistics and with the pharma companies ramp up in production of vaccines, we're never going to get there. And if we don't get there within 2021, this becomes a problem in 2022 as well. And I wonder if in 2-3 years of crisis, what the economies of the world will look like. That's why I really want everybody to collaborate all together, and so we can get out of this the sooner the better.
And I'll just quickly build upon what you shared based on the panel we had yesterday with World Economic Forum and Convince. The other big risk that I don't know if we fully comprehend, or some people fully comprehend, is the fact that the virus mutates itself, and there is a possibility that if we don't inoculate and we don't get that herd immunity faster rather than later, it can render also the existing vaccines at some point by a mutation not as effective, right? So that speed is important from an economic perspective, but also from a future vaccine effectiveness perspective. So thanks for that.
Andrea, what we're doing on top of what we are selling, to the equipment we are selling and the services and the telematics we're selling, we also provide the resources to hospitals and governments that are specialized in lean processes at our manufacturing level to organize the inoculation processes at big vaccination centers like many places, Europe or United States. So we provide the resources that could help those government entities or authorities or centralized organizations to support the speed at which they're gonna inject the vaccines to the panel in the arm of the patients. So we also provide that type of service most of the times for free, just in terms of consultancy purposes.
Great. Sophia, here's a question that came in. What have been the greatest challenges for you when tackling the magnitude of the COVID-19 vaccine distribution? I mean, I think also we can make it even more specific about Korea, right? You have quite a few stories from and case studies from having done it in Korea. Also, your solution is very useful for last mile in other parts of Asia, where it can, the terrain can be difficult, or there's a bunch of challenges that come into play. Maybe talk us on this topic a little bit. Talk to us.
I think the biggest challenges we are having, I don't believe this is only cases for Korea, but everyone else has similar issues right now. Well, we mentioned it before, but the biggest challenge is the communication. So no matter how we educate and train the drivers, we are talking about the thousands of the boxes distribution at the same time. So there will be a lot of incidents. And the problem is how we communicate faster and react on the issues. So the number itself is very huge. So that's the first issue. And then the second will be, there will be a lot of islands in Korea. Korea is a pretty small country, but it has a lot of islands that has to go by boats. And sometimes because of the weathers, it cannot simply cross the ocean. So that will be another detailed issues we are having in Korea. So in order to prevent those issues, we have provided the more than 72 hours functioning boxes in order to cover the entire Korea. And just in case the box has to come back to the cold chain warehouses, in case they couldn't deliver that.
Thank you. Chris, Emerson, with your global footprint and scope, I'd love to, maybe you can share one or two examples or case studies of, that made you most proud, and some of the lessons learned, and maybe what, what are some of the good examples of work you've done in COVID-19 distribution?
Sophia touched on this. Communication is tough, and what we see is the world's reacting, right? And here in the States specifically, every state has a different rollout plan, and so some of the challenges to that is the plan is communicated differently throughout, and how others react to that. And just like Francesco had mentioned, of the services and the different consulting tactics that we're taking on in other areas, we're sharing services, and then also starting to work with other service providers to tackle those and share their experiences and roll that out in other areas. So everyone has their own perspective of how they're going to do this, and ultimately every region is a little bit different. Every provider is a little different, and so those problems are not easy to just pinpoint and say this is a problem and we can solve this globally. It's very regional, but then we take that expertise from others and share that with others to help build a collaborative, cohesive group that can come together and help solve these things together. And like I said, some of it's interoperability of systems, but some of it is just connecting people to people. And I love the sentiment of this is not just business. This is the right thing to do for our people. And that's really when we take that piece out of it and we start doing those things, we're finding little things. There was one in the news the other day where these groups are inoculating people from different parts of underserved communities that it was a very manual thing that happened where a community that was supposed to be serving a certain county in the state started reaching out and providing this service to others that were underserved because they were recognizing that. And it had nothing to do with, it had to do with the data was providing them the information that helped them do this action, but it was very much a human action that took place. And inspiring action and inspiring people to do the right thing is really the big win that we're seeing right now. And I think that that's probably one of the most important things that we're learning right now is how business and people are doing the right thing.
Thank you. Well said, Chris. A very specific question for you, Francesco, coming from Rachel White. Do you see ultra-low temperature containers being used in land or ocean transport or primarily for storage?
No, that's thanks. Thanks for the question. Was that Katie you said, Andrea?
Rachel White.
Rachel. So thanks for the question, Rachel. A great question. No, this super freezers, and which we like to call cold storage solutions, those are refrigerators, and we attached a super insulated container to it, and we made this containerized solution, which is, of course, we're talking about 10, 20-foot containers that have double doors, curtain insides, telematics built in, and sensors within the container. Those are meant to be for temporary and storage solutions, but they can also go on the boats. These are electric units. As long as you plug them in, they will work wherever you are. And the beauty of these units is that they can go on 4 wheels. You can put them on a tractor, attach to it one of our gensets, which we also provide. And then the vaccines can move from, like Chris said, they can move from an hospital to another one without breaking the cold chain, because they will be always refrigerated at all times thanks to these generators, so they can move. So temporary, mobile, permanent storage at -70 to -75 degrees Celsius, fully monitored 24/7, super insulated containers in ISO, so international standard. That can be in country, every region, every country of the world. So really a universal solution that can provide and fill several purposes, and is also GDP certified, which is a good distribution practice approved by all the pharma companies globally. And the certification happens through very tough lab tests that an external agency approved by the pharma companies certifies, and monitor constantly. So these are, again, universal containers that can move on the road, on the ocean, and can offer temporary, permanent storage. And again, it can go also on a boat, of course.
I'll pull as we're drawing close. I mean, there is a good question that came in. I'll pull this as a kind of a final thought from Shiva, who's kind of zeroing in on vaccine wastage. I think there was unfortunate news coming today, even from Japan, right? There was some issues that they're having with utilizing some of the vaccine from the vials. The question that Shiva has is, what do you think is more important, reaching maximum people in minimum time or making operations more sustainable? I guess there's a third part to that, where could we do both simultaneously? Yeah, I'll open it up to you, Sophia, Chris, Francesco, if you have any thoughts to share.
I'll start. I guess I would say
Please.
the most important thing is all of the above, but getting quality vaccines in the people fastest is the thing. And then ultimately we have to make sure that our loved ones are safe. That is the priority one. It comes from a sustainable supply chain. It comes from quality control and systems that come together to provide that. It's all of the above, and ultimately it comes down to the patient. It comes down to us, the person that's getting the shot in the arm, and that's the most important thing, is that the efficacy of these vaccines is at the best we can provide globally.
Thank you,
Yes,
Chris.
I agree with Chris, because we are having a long-term fight here. It's not just a short-term. So we are having more the vaccine brands coming up in next 6 to 12 months. So I think it would be very important for us to secure the sustainable global logistics and then distributions as well. Because right now we don't really have a ocean freights or air freight spaces enough to deal with those kind of quantities, including the last mile. So it is very important to consider the sustainability from now on.
And of course, I agree with Chris and Sophia. On top, I would add that first of all, everybody has to be willing to be vaccinated, because otherwise we'll never reach the 70% herd immunity that we are shooting for. And this has to be in all the part of the world, right? So if we do vaccinate 70% in Western Europe, in South Asia, or in South Korea, and the United States, and we don't get the same vaccination percentage in South America, Africa, or other places of the world, we haven't done much, because until when the last one would be vaccinated, no one else would be safe enough, right? But once we have the production of the pharma companies ramping up, then to Sophia's point, we need to make the logistics available, and we need to make sure that we go fast and we vaccinate at a speed that we haven't seen before. And the way to do it is to make sure that once you get the first shot into one person's arms, then you have to secure the second shot. So you have to put in storage already the second shot. You cannot go after a second shot that it is beyond the 3 or 6 weeks that's required by the pharma companies. Otherwise, you don't meet the efficacy that you are looking for. So these are all important elements. It's a bit of an organization, but as soon as the production and the pharma companies will become available, I think we can do it all together.
Thank you. Well, with that being said, I want to thank everybody for your time. I want to encourage the audience, whether you've seen this live or whether you're going to see it in the next hours and days on LinkedIn, do connect to Chris, to Sophia, to Francesco, and get in touch if there's ways to collaborate, like we discussed today. And also, obviously, I want to wish Gong Si Fa Chai and Happy New Year to everybody stepping into the new year. Sophia specifically, again, Happy New Year and thanks for joining us. And stay safe, stay healthy, everybody, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Andrea. And let's hope for a better year already starting from Asia. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.